Good evening. Today we'll be studying the first chapter of Hilchot Shofar, Sukka, VeLulav. All of these mitzvot and halachot have to do with holidays in the month of Tishri. Hilchot Shofar, Sukka, VeLulav, yesh bichlan shalosh mitzvot aseh. There are three positive prescriptions. V'zehu piratan, and they are the following: Lishmoa kol shofar be'echad beTishri, to hear the sound of the shofar on the first of Tishri. We'll, in this chapter, Be'ezrat Hashem, we'll get into the details about that and how precise Harambam is with this term of lishmoa kol shofar, as opposed to, for example, litkoa b'shofar. For Harambam, as we'll see, the mitzvah is to hear the sound of the shofar on the first of Tishri. Bet leshev basukah shiv'at yamei hag. Number 2, to dwell in the sukkah on the 7 days of Hehag or Sukkot. And third, litol lulav b'mikdash kol shivat yemei hag. Third is litol a lulav in the 4 species in the Beit HaMikdash, all 7 days of Sukkot. Now, interestingly, the pasuk that deals with lulav says ukachtem lachem bayom harishon, and here Harambam and Chachamim in the Gemara change the language to litol lulav instead of lakahat. And an interesting question to note is why the verb lakahat was replaced with litol. As we know, the beracha for nitilat lulav is al nitilat lulav. Both seem to mean that one has to take the lulav along with the 4 species that the Torah lists for us to take, as we'll see in those halachot at the end of these set of halachot. An interesting explanation that I saw is that in biblical Hebrew, lakahat means to take, but by the time Chachamim coined the blessing, the verb lakahat meant only to buy. So, for example, ki kach ish isha. And the halacha is that the mitzvah, and one need not buy the lulav, and a lulav can come from hefker, and one may own that lulav, and the lulav also may be received as a gift. Therefore, Chachamim, by having the beracha lakahat et lulav, or Harambam having here lakahat lulav b'mikdash, would not be as accurate as litol. Just an interesting tidbit I came across today. And the expansion and clarification of these mitzvot are in the following chapters. Hilchot Shofar, Perek Aleph, Halacha Aleph. Mitzvat aseh shel Torah לשמוע תרועת השופר בראש השנה שנאמר יום תרועה יהיה לכם. It is a positive biblical obligation, prescription rather, for one to hear the blast of the shofar on Rosh Hashanah. As it says, a day of blast or sounding of the shofar you shall have for you. Now again, I want to make a note that the mitzvah for Harambam is to hear the sound of the shofar. And Harambam also writes in a teshuvah that the mitzvah on Rosh Hashanah is to hear the sound of the shofar. And there are others who disagree and say that the mitzvah is actually to blow the shofar, but for Harambam, again, the mitzvah on Rosh Hashanah is to hear the sound of the shofar. And as we saw in Hilchot Teshuvah, one of the reasons and remazim that the shofar has is basically for us to awaken from our slumber of actions and normal practices, and search within us to do teshuvah and to remember HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and to remember our Creator, and not to get caught up with, Harambam said, I believe, hivle hazman, the different things that come and go in this world. Rather, on Rosh Hashanah, it's a time for us to reflect and to do teshuvah. And the shofar is there to remind us, and hearing the sound of the shofar is to awaken us and to do teshuvah. And this is in Hilchot Teshuvah, Perek Gimal, Halacha Daled, I believe. V'shofar shetuk'in bo, and this shofar that we blow, use it to sound the blast, ben beRosh Hashanah, ben baYovel, both in regards to Rosh Hashanah, but also in regards to the Yovel. The Yovel is the 50th year, the Jubilee year, that on Yom Kippurim, the shofar is blown. Hu keren hakesavim, hakevasim hakafuf, rather. It is the curved ram's horn. Now, interestingly, this halacha begs the question: aren't all horns curved? So Rabbi Yosef Kafich has an interesting answer, and he says that one, Yohanan is basically telling us that we may not straighten out the shofar at all, despite the fact that it may be easier to blow. Rather, the shofar that we used must be a horn in its natural form, in its natural curved form. And Harambam here is posek like Rabbi Levi. However, there are those like the Ra'avad who disagree. The Harambam says that any shofar aside from the keren hakeves, the ram's horn, are invalid to be used for the shofar. ואף על פי שלא נתפרש בתורה תרועה בשופר בראש השנה, הרי הוא אומר ביובל, והעברת שופר תרועה תעבירו שופר. ומפי השמועה למדו, מה תרועת יובל בשופר, אף תרועת ראש השנה בשופר. This is a Gemara from Masechet Rosh Hashanah, Daf Lamed Gimel Amud Bet, and the Chachamim raise an issue and say that, 1 second, on Rosh Hashanah, the Torah doesn't tell us what to blow the shofar with. The Torah says, Yom Teru'ah Yeh Lachem. You should sound a blast on that day. How do we know that this is the sound of the shofar? The Torah never explicitly says we should use a shofar to make this sound. However, in regards to the Yovel, the pasuk says, you shall proclaim with the blast of the shofar, and you shall proclaim the 50th year with the shofar. And Chachamim learned through Torah Shebe'al Peh that this blast that is heard, the teruah that is heard and sounded on the Yovel, is the same teruah heard on Rosh Hashanah using the shofar, just as we do for the Yovel. Halacha Bet. במקדש היו תוקעים בראש השנה בשופר אחד ושתי חצוצרות מן הסדדים. In the Beit HaMikdash, they would blow, on Rosh Hashanah, they would blow the shofar using one shofar, and on both sides of the blower of the shofar, there would be two individuals, one on each side, blowing the hatzotzerot, these trumpets that were made out of silver. Hashofar ma'arich v'hatzotzerot mekatzerot. The sound of the shofar is elongated, and the sound of the shofarot is shortened. Shemitzvat hayom b'shofar, as the mitzvah of the day is for one to hear the shofar. V'lama tok'in imo b'hatzotzerot. And why do we sound with the shofar the trumpets? Mishum shene'emar b'hatzotzerot v'kol shofar hariu lifnei hamelech Adonai, as it says in Sefer Tehillim, Mizmor Tzadichet, that we honor and glorify HaKadosh Baruch Hu with the Hatzotzorot and with the shofar. And when we say Lifnei HaMelech Adonai, the intent is in the Beit HaMikdash. Aval, b'sh'ar mekomot, en tok'in b'Rosh Hashanah ella b'shofar bilvad. However, in places other than the Beit HaMikdash, we only use the shofar to sound the blast on the Rosh Hashanah. Halacha Giman. Now we're going to speak about the halachot pertaining to the shofar and which type of shofarot are permitted for use and which are not. Halacha Giman. Shofar shel avodah zara en tok'in bo lechatechila. From the outset, one may not use a shofar that was used for avodah zara. Now, when we say here a shofar from avodah zara, we're referring to a shofar that was the property of avodah zarah. However, a ram that was worshipped, for example, that the ram became avodah zarah itself, may not be used for blowing the shofar. So shofar shel avodah zarah and tokin bo lechatechila. Im taka bo yatsa. However, if again a person used a shofar that was the property of avodah zarah, one has fulfilled his obligation. So an interesting question, I'm not sure what the answer is that the reason why a shofar of avodah zarah of a goy, here I think the implication is that the shofar here is the avodah zarah of a goy. One would fulfill his obligation is because the avodah zarah of a goy, as we saw in Hilchot avodah zarah, is the avodah zarah of a goy may be mitbatel, may be nullified, may become null and void. However, the avodah zarah of a Jew may never be nullified, and the same logic may apply in regards to the Ir HaNidachat, as we'll see in a moment. But it's an interesting question is, and I'm not sure again what the answer is that if the Rambam doesn't tell us, but I think that the presumption here is that this shofar of avodah zarah is the avodah zarah of a goy, not of a Jew. And if it was of a Jew, I think that that one would not fulfill his obligation because you cannot be mevatel the shofar, the avodah zarah of a Jew. However, what you may be mevatel avodah zarah of a goy. However, a shofar that was taken from Ir HaNidachat, as we talked about in Hilchot avodah zarah, Ir HaNidachat was basically this seceding city that it was a city that the majority of the citizens worshipped avodah zarah. And what we do with this city is that we burn the city and all of the property inside the city, and kill anyone who worshipped avodah zarah. We saw this in Hilchot avodah zarah Perek Daled. So if one used the shofar of an Ir HaNidachat, one did not fulfill their obligation because all of the property and objects of an Ir HaNidachat are omed lisrefa, are to be burned, and one may never use them for his own. One may never gain benefit from it at all, and you cannot be mevatel anything of an Ir HaNidachat either. Shofar hagazul shetakabo, a shofar that was stolen, that one blew, that type of shofar, yatsa yedei chovato, one fulfilled his obligation with this type of shofar. She'en ha-mitzvah ela b'shmi'at hakol. The mitzvah is the sounding of the blast. Afal pi shelo naga bo velo higbiha hashomea, lo higbiha hashomea ve'en bakol din gazel. Despite the fact that now the Yerushalmi has two different answers as to why a shofar hagazul one fulfilled their obligation. Harambam here uses the second answer. That Avad utilizes the first answer. But Harambam here says that en bakol din gezel. So basically, despite the fact that a person who heard the sound fulfilled his obligation with a shofar hagazul, despite the fact that he doesn't touch the shofar or lift it, because the sound cannot be regarded as stolen property, and a sound isn't tangible. Therefore, one would fulfill their obligation with a stolen shofar. V'chen shofar shel le'ola lo yitka ve'im taka yatsa she'en bakol din me'ila. So too, a shofar that was from a sheep that was to be brought as a korban olah, and the rule is that one may not gain benefit from any object that was to be sacrificed, that was designated and set aside for the Beit HaMikdash. However, one did fulfill their obligation if they blew the shofar of an olah. And the rule is that one may not gain any benefit from an olah or anything that was designated to the Beit HaMikdash. And you want ve'im tomar ve'alo nehena mishmi'at hakol. One may say that you gain benefit from hearing the sound of the shofar. Mitzvot lo lehanot nitenu. And this is a statement from Ravan Masechet Rosh Hashanah Daf Kaf Het, that the mitzvot were not given in order for us to derive pleasure and to benefit from them. Lefikach hamudar hanaya mishofar mutar litkoa bo tekiah shel mitzvah. Therefore, a person who made a neder not to enjoy not to gain benefit or pleasure from a shofar, he may blow the shofar in order to hear the blast of the mitzvah, and he would fulfill his obligation. Halacha Daled. Shofar shel Rosh Hashanah en mechalelin alav et Yom Tov ve'afilu bedavar shehu mishum shavut. A shofar of Rosh Hashanah, one may not violate Rosh Hashanah for it, as Rosh Hashanah is one of the Yamim Tovim, even for a violation that is Mishum Shavut. And as we talked about in Hilchot Shabbat, Shavut are rabbinic prohibitions that Chachamim instituted because they are either similar to Melacha or because Chachamim didn't want a person to come close to doing a Melacha. And we'll see an example of that in a moment. Ketzad, how so? If the shofar was on the top of a tree or across a river, ve'en lo shofar elahu, and that is the only shofar that a person has to use on Rosh Hashanah. En ole ba'ilan ve'lo shat al penei hamayim kedei lahavio. One may not climb the tree, and one may not swim across the body of water in order to bring it. As we saw again in the Shabbat, that it is forbidden to climb a tree on Shabbat because you may take a branch. This is in Hilchot Shabbat Perek Kaf Aleph, and it is also too. It is prohibited for one to swim in an open body of water, as we saw in Hilchot Shabbat Kaf Gimel. And obviously here the Nahar that we're referring to is an open body of water. And we don't even need to mention that it is prohibited to cut the shofar and to do any type of melacha with the shofar. As the prescription of blowing the shofar is a positive prescription, and Yom Tov, as we saw in Hilchot Yom Tov, is a positive and a negative prescription. And as we talked about in Hilchot Yom Tov, that a positive prescription cannot supersede a positive and negative prescription. So the positive prescription of blowing the shofar cannot supersede the positive and negative prohibition of Yom Tov. However, it is permitted to put inside the shofar water or wine or vinegar on Yom Tov in order to polish it and improve the sound of the shofar. It is prohibited to put urine inside the shofar, either to clean it or to polish it, because it is disrespectful to the shofar, and the mitzvot were not given in order for one to debase the mitzvot. Halacha he. Shi'ur hashofar. Now we're going to talk about how big a shofar must be in order for it to for one to fulfill their obligation. The smallest minimum size for a shofar is for one to, if hold it in one hand, and while holding it, both sides of the shofar would be visible. Nisdak le'orko pasul. If it was split along its length, it is pasul. Le'rohbo im nishtayer bo kashiur kasher u'ilu nichrat mimekom hasedek. However, if the shofar was cracked along its width, if its minimum length is still intact, it would be kasher, and it's as if it was perforated. No, and it's as if it was cut at the top. So the sedek is the top where you put your mouth to blow the shofar, and we consider if it's cut along its width that it's as if it's cut at the top, so it would be kasher. Nikav, if it was perforated, im setamo shelo bemino pasul. If one sealed it with something other than a shofar material, it would be pasul. Setamo bemino, if it was sealed with using a material of the shofar. Im nishtayer rubo shalem velo ikevu hanekavim shenistemu et hatekiah hareze kasher. If the holes don't if the majority of it was intact and the holes don't interfere with the sound when the blast is sounded, it would be kasher. Kedaho bezachruto kasher shemin bemino eno hotzetz. Now, the shofar is made out of two parts. Sorry, the horn of a ram is made out of two parts. You have the outside, which is the shofar, but also the inside. There's an interior bone inside the shofar, and basically how it's done, how we make the shofar is that we extract the interior bone and only use the outside. So if the shofar was sealed with the interior bone, it is kasher, it would be permitted to be used. Shemin bemino eno hotzetz, because the horn, the bone, the interior bone and the shofar itself are considered the same item and of the same substance, and it is considered one item and not separate. Dibek shivre shofarot ad shehim hishlimo le'echad pasul. If one glued together fragments of different shofarot until they were joined to one, it is prohibited to be used. Halacha vav. Hosef alav kol shehu ben bemino ben shelo bemino pasul. If one added any amount, anything or any amount to the shofar, for example, if he added a mouthpiece to the shofar in order for it to be easier to blow, regardless if it was the same substance, meaning the substance of the shofar, material of the shofar, or a different type of material, it would be pasul. If it was plated with, the shofar was plated with gold on the inside or at the mouthpiece, it would be pasul. If it was plated out of gold on the outside, if the sound is changed after you plate it on the inside, on the outside rather, it would be pasul. However, if it was plated on the outside and the sound remains the same as it was before you plated it, it would be permitted for use. Natan shofar betoch shofar, if one put a shofar inside a shofar, im kol penimi shama yatsa, if the inner horn's sound was heard, one fulfilled their obligation. Ve'im kol hitzon shama lo yatsa. However, if the external horn's sound was heard, one did not fulfill their obligation. If the narrow end is widened, or if the wide end was narrowed, obviously referring to the sides of the shofar, it is pasul. Haya aruch v'kitzero kasher. If it was long, if the shofar was long and one shortened it, it would be permitted for use. Geredo ben mibifnim ben mibachutz, afilu ha'mido al gildo kasher. If one scraped the shofar, whether he scraped it from the inside or the outside, even if all that was left was just the very thin shell of the shofar, it would be permitted for use. Haya kol ave odak utzarur kasher, tzarud kasher, shekol hakolot kasherin b'shofar. If the sound of the shofar was thick or not so thick or scrappy, the sound of the one fulfilled their obligation, and the sound is fine, and the shofar is kasher, as all of the sounds coming out of the shofar are kasher. Final halacha, halacha het, hatokea betoch habor or betoch me'ara. If one blew the shofar inside a cave or inside a pit, and you may ask why one would ever think of doing such a thing, but back in the day, during the Roman times, when it was dangerous to fulfill mitzvot, it seems that the Chachamim blew the shofar in those places to fulfill their obligations. אותם העומדים בתוך הבור והמערה יצאו, והעומדים בחוץ, אם כל שופר שמעו יצאו, ואם כל הברה שמעו לא יצאו. So those standing inside the cave or the pit fulfill their obligation. However, those standing outside, if they heard the sound of the shofar, they fulfilled their obligation. However, if they heard the sound of an echo, they did not fulfill their obligation. So too, if a person blew the shofar inside a large barrel or jug or anything of the sort, Im kol shofar shama, yatsa, ve'im kol havara shama, lo yatsa. If one heard the sound of the shofar, he fulfilled his obligation, and if one heard the sound of an echo, one did not fulfill their obligation. Be'ezrat Hashem, tomorrow morning we'll be studying the second chapter of Hilchot Shofar, Sukka, VeLulav.